Okay, I wanted to do a video on imminence and emergence and how you can hear my car squeak in the wind, and how that's really the center of everything. It's really what I would call an incarnational theology. Jess has been talking about this with Job. It's what being a mediator is. I think it's what being a human being is. But everything is really connected to it. I've been thinking about this with Barbie. I may make a Barbie review because I like Barbie and think there's actually quite a bit of depth there. I think it's a good movie in a number of levels, and I think that a lot of the reviews are pretty superficial and uncharitable, and I think are projecting and seeing what they want to see rather than seeing what they could see. But so in short, Barbie is what I would say Barbie is most succinctly is the ideal being made real through a voluntary entering into suffering and difficulty, and it raises the question of what is perfection. What does it mean to be real? It's not this kind of static ideal. And so, and I've even been thinking about this in terms of thinking and belief and how these things work, because something that comes up a lot in this little corner of the internet is propositionalism. You know, I've been talking about it forever. Vervaeke talks about it now, or has been for a long time. You know, his 4 P's of knowing, of which one is propositionalism. But I would almost talk about propositionalism and I don't know, later this week, hopefully, God willing, I'm going to have this conversation with Sam where we're going to talk further about confessionalism and his recent video of his update and what happened at his church, etc. Maybe we'll get into some of my experience and some of my broader critiques of confessionalism. But what I think happens with propositions, this is all tied very much to my personal knowing, is that you get, and Jess has been talking about this too, with seeds, because a seed and bringing forth fruit is very much the example of how these things work. It's also tied to Rupert Sheldrake, I think, with morphic fields. But you maybe get the seed of an idea, of a belief in propositional form. Like somebody will say something. But in order for that seed to become real, to bear fruit, to be manifest in your life, because it's this static ideal, right? It's Barbie. It's this perfect thing. It's this perfect, unchanging, unsuffering, unself-aware, unfallen, whatever you want to call it, static thing. And, you know, spoiler alert, but that's one of the things that Barbie says at the end. Like, I don't want to just be the idea. I want to be she who imagines, or the imaginer. I want to participate in imagination. I don't know, it's beautiful. And it's overlaid with that great Billie Eilish song, which is fantastic, I think. And Margot Robbie's a brilliant actress. So you cannot just, if you just sit, this is what confessionalism does by what I think is groupthink, because this is what I think confessionalism is it just sits in the proposition as a static ideal. But what you don't know is that seed, Jess said something very similar to this recently, that static seed has to go into you. This is like that video that Chad made so long ago about my Eucharistic knowing with the apples and the dancing apples that Chad edited together. And this is very much like communion. The seed has to enter your body, or the germ, the idea, Christ, and then has to go through you and be digested, and there has to be this reciprocity, this fight, this sloughing off, this death, and then it has to re-manifest in your life and come up in your own words. This is why in any good education, you can't just plagiarize. You can't just pull, parrot, repeat things. That's one phase of your learning. But then at some point, those words have to become your own. And they'll say, okay, tell me what this means in your own words. Why do we do that? It's because the seed has to die and be reborn in you. Because that's what true knowing is. But that's also how everything is. You can't... God if he just stays the static ideal, is the God of the philosophers and isn't real. God has to be manifest in creation, which is the idea of Christ. But then also, like Yosef was pushing back at Paul's recent video and made some comments, and this is my thing to him, is that, but then also Christ, Jesus Christ can't become the static ideal. That seed has to die and then be manifest in me. That's Christ in me. And then that fractally radiates out to all of creation, which is Maximus Ambiguum that Jordan Daniel Wood talks about all the time. So the immanence and emergence happens, it's applicable to everything. It's applicable to knowing, it's applicable to ontology, it's applicable to being, it's applicable to what it means to be a human. It applies at all levels. So those are my thoughts on that.